Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our best practices presentation about our instructor development program called Meaningful Inquiry. On this slide, we have the facilitators of the workshop who are also the presenters and authors of this presentation. Joining us from the Ohio State University Libraries are Amanda Folk, Jane Hammons, and Hanna Primeau. From the OSU Newark Campus Library, Katie Blocksidge, and from Writing Across the Curriculum, Chris Manion.
Before we describe the Meaningful Inquiry program, we wanted to start by taking just a minute to explain why we are focusing on instructor development. Although we all value the opportunity to work directly with students, we also recognize it is not possible to reach all students, especially at an institution the size of Ohio State. And so we have made instructor development an important focus area in our work. We believe that there are several benefits to taking this approach. We have the ability to engage with multiple instructors at once through our programming. And when those instructors incorporate what they learned during Meaningful Inquiry into their classes, we are expanding our reach into classes and programs we might never have been able to reach otherwise. We can reach all different types of instructors, from tenured faculty to adjunct or associated faculty, including those at our regional campuses, thus creating the potential for transformation at multiple levels. We also sometimes have participants who have roles such as instructional designer, and they can carry what they learn into their work with instructors. In addition, since Meaningful Inquiry is offered in collaboration with our University Center for Teaching and Learning, it helps to raise the visibility of the libraries and Writing Across the Curriculum as partners in supporting teaching and learning at the university. And now we will briefly describe the Meaningful Inquiry program. Meaningful Inquiry is an evidence-based workshop aimed at course instructors, graduate teaching assistants, and others who collaborate with instructors, including librarians and instructional designers. The workshop considers a common assignment, the research assignment, within the context of social and racial class equity gaps in American higher education. Participants are encouraged to consider how research assignments and their own instructional practices around research assignments may contribute to the persistence of these gaps, and are introduced to pedagogical strategies intended to help them take an equity-minded approach to designing research assignments and transparently communicating their expectations around these assignments to students.
On the next two slides, we share the learning outcomes of the workshop. In addition to thinking about the potential relationship between equity gaps and research assignments, we explicitly highlight the role of information literacy in this work and how the framework can help instructors identify where students may be struggling with an assignment. We spotlight two pedagogical strategies to help students take an equity-minded approach to research assignments, decoding the disciplines and transparency in learning and teaching. We also ask instructors to identify practical ways in which they can design equitable, inquiry-based assignments that increase students' motivation to learn and academic engagement.
Based on the sociocultural nature of information literacy, we believe that the dispositions and knowledge practices as articulated in the Framework for Information Literacy for Higher Education have the potential to remain part of a hidden curriculum, meaning that some students do not have access to the expectations related to performance on research assignments in college. Therefore, it is essential that instructors are transparent in communicating their expectation to students, as well as helping to develop their information literacy. Based on the work of Dr. Estella Mara Ben-Simone, we believe that instructors can take an equity-minded approach to developing students' information literacy by regularly reflecting on the difficulties students have in meeting their expectations and changing their teaching practices to help students move past these stumbling blocks.
Developed by Joan Middendorf and David Pace, Decoding the Disciplines is intended to reduce the gap between expert and novice thinking by making clear the ways of thinking and mental steps that experts use that may not be visible to students. In practice, instructors need to think back to their own experiences as novices to determine how they learn to complete research and understand concepts within their disciplines. After identifying bottlenecks, instructors can consider how they would model these hidden tasks for students and provide them with opportunities to practice those tasks and receive formative feedback.
We also introduced participants to Transparency in Learning and Teaching, or TILT, which was developed by Marianne Winklemas and her colleagues at the University of Nevada at Las Vegas. In TILT, student learning is improved when instructors explicitly emphasize 3 components of assignments: purpose, task, and criteria. With purpose, we make sure that we're transparent about why students are completing the assignment, both from the instructor perspective, as well as considering students' learning goals they have for the course. In tasks, we consider what the steps are that students have to complete the assignment and ultimately be successful. With criteria, we consider how students' performance will be evaluated and what will be most important for determining their grade and making sure that we're sharing that information with students.
This workshop was broken down into 5 modules, which, when this workshop is taught in person, breaks up into a module for the morning and afternoon on 2 days, and a single module and time to work with the facilitators on the final day. When virtual, this neatly breaks up into 1 a week. We thoughtfully arranged the content to scaffold in early concepts that were likely new to most participants, while folding in applications to inquiry-based assignments, much like they have in their courses already, giving plenty of time before and after content to reflect on their own knowledge of the daily topic and give time to process new information post a session. We shifted who led each section, with each facilitator taking on a role that aligned with their current work, allowing the participants to see the robust skills in the room to assist them through this journey. We also utilized different styles of reflection prompts, both in person and virtually, helping to ensure that the practice of reflections did not become stale. Participants also filled out a workbook, allowing them to process new information and reflect on it in activities throughout each module, and in the virtual environment, allowing them to take their time as needed. To ensure that we're keeping to the standards that we are teaching, we began each module with expectations, being transparent about goals and how we intended participants to reach them, all the while interlacing readings and videos of facilitators supplying mini lectures of the content to assist with comprehension.
The workshop was originally designed to be face-to-face, and we offered it 2 times as an in-person event, once in August 2019 and again in December 2019. As a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, we converted the workshop to a fully online offering and experimented with different meeting patterns for the synchronous group discussions. We have offered the fully online version 4 times. To date, we've had 63 participants in more than 20 departments across 3 campuses of the university participate and complete in meaningful inquiry. In both the face-to-face and online offerings, participants were asked to voluntarily respond to a pre-workshop survey to capture their current thinking about information literacy, research assignments, and equitable learning, as well as exploring their motivations for participating in the workshop. They were also asked to voluntarily respond to a post-workshop survey to capture any changes in their thinking about these topics, as well as feedback about the workshop more generally. These 2 surveys, plus an optional anonymous feedback survey, provide the data for the slides that follow.
As mentioned, we asked our participants about their motivation in participating in this workshop. While none of the instructors from outside of the libraries mentioned information literacy explicitly in their responses, information literacy was definitely implicit. Many explicitly mentioned the importance of research or inquiry-based assignments and a desire to help their students learn the skills to perform well on these assignments. Many also wanted to find ways to engage their students with these assignments, as well as creating more equitable opportunities for success.
We also specifically asked participants, what does the term information literacy mean to you, if anything? In their responses, some common themes were that information literacy is about finding and using information, and that the critical evaluation of sources is an important aspect of information literacy. Many of the characteristics and definitions that participants provided were quite good and matched the perceptions of information literacy that are commonly shared among librarians. However, it was less common for participants to describe information literacy in terms of creating new knowledge or developing an understanding of how and why different types of information are created, disseminated, and valued. Participants also completed a survey after the workshop, and we did begin to notice some changes in the way participants thought about information literacy. It was more likely that participants would incorporate language from the framework and to emphasize the importance of disciplinary context when thinking about information literacy. Several participants noted that information literacy was more complex than they had initially considered, and even if they did not think their definition had significantly changed, some noted that they felt they had a better understanding of how to teach information literacy.
Prior to starting the workshop, we also asked participants, what is the purpose of assigning research or inquiry-based assignments in your courses? What are these kinds of assignments meant to accomplish? While instructors described how the assignments would develop students' research and academic skills, they didn't address the purpose of the assignments or what made them meaningful within their courses or their disciplines. Following the workshop, instructor responses addressed the why behind research assignments, including why specific types of research projects were important within their discipline. Instructors also stated that they now consider the motivation of students and highlighted the importance of designing research assignments to reduce barriers to successful performance.
We also received general feedback regarding the workshop, where multiple participants talked about the meaningfulness of being able to interact with instructors from outside their departments while working towards a common goal. Multiple participants also mentioned the usefulness of the framework of information literacy for higher education, a new framework to most of our participants that aligned closely with their inquiry-based assignment goals, and then mentioned in tandem often the usefulness of decoding the disciplines in TILT.
As we have now implemented the workshop multiple times in different formats, there are several things that have stood out to us in terms of lessons learned. We learned that it's important to consider the format when making decisions about how many participants can be accommodated. It might be tempting to think that in an online format, you can have more participants, but we found instead that we needed to limit the number of folks that we could accommodate in the online format, especially as we wanted to have live discussions, and those are more difficult to handle when everyone is on Zoom. Although we have had some very engaging discussions, we've also found it more difficult to get some folks to participate in these discussions in the online format. It's also challenging because some participants prefer to share over chat and some by speaking, so it seemed at times that there were parallel conversations going on. However, on the positive side, being flexible with the delivery method did allow us to have some folks participate that may not otherwise have been able to because of time or distance issues. We also found that it was important to set clear expectations for the workshop. We made it clear that what was said in the workshop stayed in the workshop so that participants would feel free to share the concerns that they may have had. For this reason, we did not record the synchronous discussions. In addition, it was also important to emphasize that we are all learning together, and so it's important to treat everyone with kindness and to be open to new ideas. For example, in the most recent iteration, we had some participants raise concerns about some of the language that we used around achievement gaps, and we recognized that it was a legitimate concern and plan to make revisions for future iterations.
Thank you so much for attending our best practices presentation about meaningful inquiry. We're happy to answer any questions that you might have using the email address that we've shared on the screen. If you'd like to revisit our slide deck from this presentation, you may do so by using the URL that we've shared on the screen.